Nathaniel Sterling made the fatal mistake of confusing silence with surrender. As the billionaire tech mogul sat across the mahogany table, gloating with his young mistress, he thought he was stripping his wife of everything. He expected Viviane to scream, to cry, or to beg for a better settlement. But she did none of those things. She simply carved her signature onto the divorce decree, looked him dead in the eye, and smiled. It wasn't the smile of a defeated woman. It was the smile of someone pulling the pin on a grenade. 5 minutes later, she didn't just walk away from their marriage. She sped away in the one thing he loved more than himself, his $40 million Ferrari. And she was just getting started. The air in the conference room of Pendleton Worth and Associates was so cold it could have preserved a corpse. It was fitting, really, because Nathaniel Sterling was currently trying to bury his marriage of 10 years. Nathaniel sat at the head of the mahogany table, looking every inch the tech mogul he was. His suit was bespoke Savile Row, his watch a Patek Philippe that cost more than most people's homes, and his expression was one of bored arrogance. Sitting practically in his lap was Chantel, a 23-year-old Instagram influencer who was currently popping chewing gum and scrolling through her phone, visibly bored by the legal proceedings, destroying another woman's life. Across from them sat Viviane Cross. She wore no jewelry. Her dress was a simple black sheath, elegant but understated. Her blonde hair was pulled back into a severe bun. She looked pale, perhaps a little tired, but entirely composed. To the casual observer, she looked like a defeated woman ready to surrender. "Let's wrap this up, Arthur," Nathaniel said, checking his watch. "I have a tea time at Cypress Point in 4 hours, and the jet is waiting on the tarmac. Does she understand the terms?" Arthur Pendleton, the most expensive divorce attorney in Manhattan, adjusted his spectacles and looked pityingly at Vivian. "Mrs. Sterling, as we've discussed, the prenuptial agreement you signed a decade ago is ironclad. You get a lump sum of $200,000, you vacate the Tribeca penthouse immediately, and you waive all rights to spousal support. In exchange, Mr. Sterling agrees not to pursue reputational damages regarding the incident in Monaco." The incident was a fabrication. A lie Nathaniel had planted in the tabloids about Viviane having a drinking problem to discredit her before the divorce filing. It was a classic move, paint the wife as unstable so the husband looks like a saint for tolerating her. Viviane remained silent. Her eyes moved from the thick stack of documents to Nathaniel's face. He wasn't even looking at her. He was whispering something into Chantel's ear that made the girl giggle shrilly. "Viviane," Arthur pressed his voice, dripping with condescension. "Do you understand? If you don't sign, now Nathaniel pulls the offer. You'll be left with nothing but legal fees you can't afford." Nathaniel finally looked up, a cruel smirk playing on his lips. "Just sign it, Viv. Don't make this pathetic. You know you can't win against me. I own this city. I own the press. I certainly own this room. Take the check, move back to that dusty little town in Ohio, and find a nice mechanic to marry. This life, it was never meant for you." Chantel looked up from her phone, smirking. "Yeah, Viv, don't be dramatic. We have a flight to catch." The disrespect hung in the air, thick and suffocating. The junior associates in the back of the room shifted uncomfortably. They had seen brutal divorces before, but the casual cruelty of Nathaniel Sterling was in a league of its own. Viviane took a deep breath. She reached into her purse. Nathaniel tensed, perhaps expecting a weapon or a recording device. Instead, she pulled out a pair of reading glasses, perched them on her nose, and picked up the heavy fountain pen lying on the document. "Is there anything you'd like to say, Mrs. Sterling?" Arthur asked, hoping to avoid a scene. Viviane looked up. For the first time, the dullness in her blue eyes vanished, replaced by a razor-sharp clarity that sent a strange shiver down Nathaniel's spine. "No, Arthur," she said, her voice smooth and steady, lacking even a tremor of emotion. "I think Nathaniel has said quite enough for both of us." She flipped to the final page. She didn't read the clauses. She didn't hesitate. With a fluid, graceful motion, she signed her name, Viviane Cross Sterling. Then she closed the folder and pushed it across the table. The silence that followed was deafening. Nathaniel blinked. He had prepared for a war. He had his security team on standby in the lobby. He had a PR crisis team, ready to release a statement about her mental breakdown. He wanted her to scream. He wanted her to beg. He needed her to be the crazy ex-wife so he could be the victim. But she gave him nothing. Viviane stood up, smoothing the front of her dress. She looked at Chantel, then at Nathaniel, and then slowly the corners of her lips curled upward. It wasn't a sad smile. It wasn't a bitter smile. It was the smile of a predator who had just watched the trap door slam shut. "Goodbye, Nathaniel," she said softly. "Enjoy Cypress Point." She turned and walked toward the door, her heels clicking rhythmically against the marble floor. "Wait," Nathaniel barked, standing up. The smile unsettled him. It felt wrong. "Why are you smiling? Did you not hear me? You're walking out of here with nothing. I won." Viviane paused at the frosted glass doors. She didn't turn around. She simply reached into her clutch again. This time, she didn't pull out glasses. She pulled out a set of car keys with a distinct heavy fob bearing a prancing horse logo. She tossed the keys lightly in the air, caught them, and looked back over her shoulder. "Nothing is ever truly nothing, darling," she whispered. She pushed the doors open and vanished into the hallway. "What was that?" Chantel asked, looking confused. "Why does she have keys?" Nathaniel's face went white. He scrambled over the table, knocking over a pitcher of water, and rushed to the window, looking down at the street. "No," he whispered, his heart hammering against his ribs. She wouldn't dare. The heat of the New York afternoon hit Viviane as she stepped out of the high-rise onto Fifth Avenue. But she felt nothing but a cool, refreshing liberation. The chaotic symphony of honking taxis and shouting pedestrians sounded like music. She walked purposefully toward the VIP parking zone directly in front of the law firm. There, gleaming under the sunlight, like a beast made of liquid silver, sat the Ferrari 250 GTO. It wasn't just a car. It was the car. Nathaniel Sterling's car collection was famous, valued at over $50 million. But the 1963 GTO was the crown jewel. He had spent 3 years negotiating the purchase from a reclusive collector in Austria. He treated the car better than he treated his wife. He didn't even drive it. He just had it transported to shows to win awards, then locked it away in a climate-controlled vault. Today, however, he had driven it to the signing. It was a power move. He wanted to flaunt his wealth, to show Viviane exactly what she was walking away from. He had parked it right out front, paying the valets $1,000 just to watch it, so that when Viviane left, the building broke, and alone she would have to walk past the symbol of his ultimate victory. The 2 valets were standing guard by the silver hood. When they saw Viviane approaching, they stiffened. "Mrs. Sterling," one of them said, nodding politely. "Can we call you a taxi?" "No need, James," Viviane said, her voice light. She held up the key fob. James looked at the key, then back at the building, then at Viviane. "Ma'am, Mr. Sterling gave us strict instructions. No one touches the GTO, especially not, well, he said he's the only one driving it out. Viviane didn't break stride. She stopped right in front of the driver's side door. James, look at the license plate. The valet frowned and looked down. The custom plate read, VIV-1. Nathaniel was always so sentimental. Viviane lied smoothly, her heart rate not even spiking. It was his parting gift, part of the settlement, a peace offering for the Monaco incident. You know how he gets. James hesitated. He knew about the divorce, it was all over the news, but he also knew Nathaniel Sterling was a narcissist who gave nothing away. However, Viviane was holding the key, and the plate. He had never noticed the plate before. I really should check with James. Viviane cut him off, her tone dropping an octave, becoming stern and authoritative. I just signed the papers. I am exhausted. Do you really want to call Nathaniel Sterling right now, while he's in the middle of a legal briefing with his new girlfriend, and ask him if he really meant to give his ex-wife the car? He promised her. Do you want to be the one to interrupt him? James paled. Everyone in the service industry in New York knew that interrupting Nathaniel Sterling was a fireable offense, usually accompanied by a lawsuit. Here, Viviane said, pressing a $100 bill into his palm. You're doing a great job. Open the door. James swallowed hard, took the bill, and opened the door. Viviane slid into the vintage leather bucket seat. The smell of old money gasoline and Italian leather filled her senses. It was the smell of victory. She inserted the key into the ignition. The engine roared to life, a guttural, aggressive growl that turned heads all down the block. Up on the 40th floor, Nathaniel Sterling was pressing his face against the glass, his breath fogging up the window. Is that? Arthur Pendleton squinted. Is that the GTO? That? Nathaniel's voice strangled in his throat. That witch! He watched in horror as the silver beast pulled away from the curb. Viviane didn't just drive off. She floored it. The tires screeched, leaving a mark of burnt rubber on the pristine asphalt. She wove effortlessly into traffic, cutting off a yellow taxi, and sped down Fifth Avenue. Call the police! Nathaniel screamed, spinning around his face, turning a shade of purple that matched his tie. Arthur, call the NYPD. She stole it. That's grand theft auto. That car is worth $40 million. Arthur was already on the phone, his fingers trembling. Police, yes, this is Arthur Pendleton. We have a theft in progress at... He paused, listening to the person on the other line. His face fell. What? Nathaniel roared. What are they saying? Arthur lowered the phone slowly, looking at his client with a mixture of confusion and horror. Mr. Sterling, the police say they can't report it as stolen. Why the hell not? Because, Arthur said, looking at a file on his iPad that he had just refreshed. According to the DMV database, the car is registered to her. Nathaniel froze. That's impossible. I bought it. I wired the money. You wired the money from the Joint Cayman Holdings account, Arthur whispered, realizing the gravity of the mistake. And if I recall, to hide the asset from the IRS last year, you put the title in the name of a shell company. Yes, Sterling Vistas LLC, Nathaniel shouted. No, sir. Arthur corrected him, sweat beading on his forehead. You told me to put it in the safest possible entity so the auditors wouldn't find it. You put it in the VC trust. Nathaniel's knees gave out. He slumped into the leather chair. VC Trust. Vivian Cross Trust. He had created it 5 years ago as a tax haven, naming her the sole beneficiary, because he thought she was too stupid to ever check the financials. He thought she was just a trophy wife who signed whatever paper he put in front of her. He had hidden his most valuable asset in her name to save on taxes, fully intending to transfer it back before the divorce. But he had forgotten, and Viviane hadn't. Down on the street, Viviane watched the skyline of Manhattan blur past her. The wind whipped through her hair. She reached over to the passenger seat, opened the glove box, and pulled out a thick envelope she had stashed there weeks ago. Inside was a passport, a one-way ticket to Zurich, and a USB drive containing terabytes of data that Nathaniel Sterling would kill to keep buried. She looked in the rearview mirror, imagining Nathaniel's face melting down in that high-rise office. "Step 1 complete," she whispered to herself. She shifted gears, the engine singing a high note as she accelerated toward the highway. She wasn't just driving a car. She was driving the first stake into the heart of the Sterling Empire. And she was just getting started. The George Washington Bridge stretched out before Viviane, like a steel rib cage, suspending her between her past and her future. The vibrations of the Ferrari's V12 engine traveled up her arms, rattling her bones, a constant reminder of the beast she was controlling. At 60 miles per hour, the car was practically idling. At 80, it began to sing. Viviane kept her eyes on the road, but her mind was replaying the last 3 years of her life in high definition. The slow realization that she was being phased out. The way Nathaniel would stop speaking when she entered the room. The discovery of the second phone. The discovery of the third phone. She checked the rearview mirror. No sirens, no black SUVs. Not yet. Nathaniel wasn't stupid. He wouldn't call the police again. He knew that dragging the NYPD into this would mean filing reports, and filing reports meant creating a paper trail about the car's ownership. A paper trail that would lead the IRS directly to the VC Trust and the $40 million of undeclared assets hidden within it. No, Nathaniel would call Garrison. The thought made her grip the wooden steering wheel tighter. Garrison was the head of Sterling's private security, a former paramilitary contractor who specialized in asset retrieval and reputation management. He didn't ask questions, and he didn't follow the law. Viviane took the exit toward New Jersey, her heart hammering a rhythm against her ribs that matched the RPM of the engine. She needed to get off the grid, and she needed to do it fast. Back in the frozen conference room in Manhattan, the atmosphere had shifted from shock to a terrifying silent panic. Nathaniel Sterling was pacing the length of the room, his phone pressed to his ear, his knuckles white. Chantel was sitting in the corner, forgotten nervously chewing on a fingernail. She had stopped scrolling Instagram. The reality that her billionaire boyfriend was currently unraveling was sobering. "I don't care how you do it, Garrison," Nathaniel hissed into the phone, turning his back to the window. "Find the car. She's in the GTO. It has the factory tracker, but she might have disabled the LoJack. No, she's not that smart. Just find the signal." He paused, listening to the gravelly voice on the other end. "And Garrison," Nathaniel added his voice, dropping to a whisper that made Arthur the lawyer shudder. "When you find her, bring me the bag. The car matters, but the bag she took from the glove box. That matters more. Do whatever you have to do." He hung up and threw the phone onto the mahogany table. It slid across the polished surface and stopped inches from Arthur's hand. "Mr. Sterling," Arthur said tentatively, wiping sweat from his upper lip. "If that car really is in her name, technically she hasn't committed a crime. If Garrison intercepts her and uses force—" "Shut up, Arthur," Nathaniel roared, slamming his hands down on the table. The veins in his neck bulged. "Do you think I care about the technicalities? Do you know what was on that USB drive in the glove box?" Arthur shook his head, terrified. Nathaniel walked over to the window, staring down at the ants crawling along Fifth Avenue. The entire ledger for Project Obsidian, every bribe paid to city council members for the new stadium deal, every offshore transfer to the Caymans. If that drive gets to the district attorney, I don't just lose my company. I go to federal prison for 20 years. The room went deadly silent. Even Chantel stopped chewing her nail. She played the long game. Nathaniel whispered, the realization hitting him like a physical blow. She didn't just want a divorce. She sat there for years, pouring my scotch, hosting my dinners, smiling like an idiot, and she was documenting everything. 40 minutes later, Viviane pulled the Ferrari into a dusty, nondescript industrial park in Secaucus. The unit was number 404. It was fitting error. Not found. She had rented this unit 6 months ago, paying in cash, wearing a wig and sunglasses. She punched the code into the keypad, the date of her wedding, a bitter little joke she kept for herself, and the rusted metal door rolled up with a screech. She drove the silver Ferrari inside. The space was tight, smelling of damp concrete and motor oil. Sitting in the corner of the unit, covered in a grey tarp, was her escape pod, a 2015 Honda Civic with 120,000 miles on the odometer, bought from a private seller on Craigslist for $4,000 cash. Viviane killed the engine of the Ferrari. The silence that followed was heavy. She sat there for a moment, her hands trembling on the wheel. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by the crushing weight of what she had just done. She had declared war on a man who destroyed people for sport. She opened the door and stepped out. She ran her hand along the curve of the Ferrari's fender one last time. It was a beautiful machine, a work of art. But to her, it was just a gilded car on wheels. "Goodbye, you beautiful monster," she whispered. She opened the trunk of the Ferrari. Inside was a toolkit. She took out a screwdriver and walked to the rear of the car. With steady hands, she unscrewed the custom license plate, VIV1. She tossed the plate into the back seat of the Honda. Then she did the hardest thing. She opened the glove box, took out the USB drive, her passport, and the wad of cash. She left the Ferrari keys on the driver's seat. She walked over to the Honda, pulled off the tarp, and got in. It smelled like stale cigarettes and vanilla air freshener, a stark contrast to the Italian leather she had just left. But as the engine sputtered to life, it sounded like safety. She backed the Honda out, closed the garage door, and locked it. As she drove away, merging into the anonymous flow of traffic on the turnpike, she wasn't Mrs. Nathaniel Sterling, the socialite. She was nobody, and being nobody was the safest thing she could be. Night had fallen over New York City, turning the skyline into a jagged row of illuminated teeth. Garrison stood in the center of the industrial park in Secaucus. He was a man made of sharp angles and scar tissue, wearing a black tactical jacket that blended into the shadows. Behind him stood two of his associates, large men, who looked like they were carved out of granite. "The signal stopped here," one of the men said, holding a tablet glowing with a green map. "Unit 404. Garrison didn't speak. He approached the rolling metal door. He inspected the lock. It was a cheap, standard-issue padlock. He pulled a pair of bolt cutters from his bag and snapped the metal shank in one fluid motion. He signaled his men. They drew concealed weapons, tasers and batons. Nothing loud. Nothing that would leave a bullet hole. They threw the door up. The beam of their flashlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the silver curve of the Ferrari. 250 GTO. It was there. Safe. Unharmed. "Boss will be happy," one of the men grunted, moving to secure the vehicle. Garrison didn't move. He scanned the small garage. He saw the dust patterns on the floor. He saw the tarp crumpled in the corner. "Check the glove box," Garrison ordered, his voice like grinding gravel. The associate opened the Ferrari door, leaned in, and popped the latch. "Empty. Keys are on the seat, though." Garrison cursed under his breath. "He won't be happy. The car was the bait. She knew we'd track it." He walked around the vehicle. He noticed the missing license plate. "She's smarter than Nathaniel gave her credit for," Garrison muttered. She swapped vehicles. Check the tire tracks in the dust. Faint, narrow tread. Probably a sedan, an economy car, something that disappears. He pulled out his phone. He had to make the call that no one wanted to make to Nathaniel Sterling. "We have the car," Garrison said, when Nathaniel answered on the first ring. "And Viviane." Nathaniel's voice was high-tight with stress. "Do you have the drive?" "She's gone, sir. The car was a decoy. She switched vehicles. She's in the wind." A sound of shattering glass came through the phone line. Nathaniel had thrown something. "Find her, Garrison. She has no money. She has no credit cards. I froze everything an hour ago. She can't get far." Garrison looked at the empty space where the Honda had been. "With all due respect, sir, if she planned this car swap, she probably has us cash. She's not running like a scared wife. She's running like an operative." "Then hunt her like one." Nathaniel screamed and hung up. Oh, Viviane was 200 miles away, sitting in a booth at a 24-hour diner near the Delaware border. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a sickly yellow pallor over the Formica table. She had ordered a black coffee and a slice of cherry pie she had no intention of eating. Her phone, a burner flip phone she had bought at a gas station, sat on the table. Beside it was her laptop, not the sleek MacBook she used at home, but a chunky encrypted Lenovo ThinkPad that Simon, her forensic accountant, had given her. She plugged the USB drive into the laptop. The screen flickered, and then the file directory opened. Folder: Cayman_routing. Folder: City_council_payoffs. Folder: Sterling_personal_slush. She opened the slush folder. It wasn't just numbers. It was photos. Scans of handwritten notes, receipts from hotels in Monaco, Paris, and Milan, dates that coincided with business trips where Nathaniel had claimed to be alone. But deeper than the affairs, there were the emails. Emails between Nathaniel and a contractor regarding the structural integrity of his latest skyscraper project in Brooklyn. She clicked on a PDF dated 3 months ago. Subject: concrete density report. Failed. From structural engineer to N. Sterling. Mr. Sterling, the concrete mix we are using is substandard. It does not meet safety code 4B. If we proceed with the pouring on the upper floors, there is a 40% chance of structural fatigue within 5 years. We need to halt construction. She opened the reply from Nathaniel. Pour it. We are already over budget. Just pay the inspector to look the other way. I want that building topped out by Christmas. Viviane felt bile rise in her throat. It wasn't just financial fraud. He was building a death trap. People would live there. Families, children. And he was risking their lives to save a few percentage points on the margin. She realized then that this wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't about the divorce or the humiliation. It was about stopping a monster. She took a sip of the bitter coffee, her hand shaking. She needed to make a call, but not to the police. Nathaniel owned the police commissioner. They played golf together every Sunday. If she went to the cops, the evidence would accidentally be corrupted and she would disappear. She needed the Fourth Estate. She dialed a number from memory. It was a number she had seen on a business card Nathaniel had torn up and thrown in the trash 2 years ago, calling the woman a meddling vulture. The phone rang 4 times. "This is Clara Jenkins, New York Times investigative desk. It's 3:00 a.m. This better be good." "Hello, Clara." Viviane said, her voice surprisingly steady. "My name is Viviane Sterling." There was a pause on the line. The rustling of sheets. Clara was waking up fast. The Viviane Sterling. The one who just stole a $40 million car. "I didn't steal it. It's mine," Viviane corrected. "But that's not the story you want." "What story do I want?" Clara asked, her tone shifting from annoyed to hungry. "I have the Obsidian files," Viviane said, "and I have proof that Nathaniel Sterling is building a tower in Brooklyn that is going to collapse." The silence on the other end was absolute. "Where are you?" Clara asked. "I can't tell you that," Viviane said. "Not yet. I need to know you can print it. I need to know his lawyers can't kill the story before it hits the morning edition." "If you have the proof," Clara said, her voice steely, "I'll print it on the front page of the Sunday edition. I don't care how many lawyers he has. But I need to see the docs." "You'll get them," Viviane said, "but I need a favor first." "Name it." "I need you to find out where Chantel, his mistress, is right now." "Why?" Clara asked, confused. Viviane looked out the window of the diner into the pitch-black night. "Because Nathaniel doesn't care about the law. He cares about his ego. If I want to keep him off my back long enough to get you these files, I need to hit him where he lives. I need to create a spectacle." "Give me 10 minutes," Clara said. Viviane hung up. She looked at the pie. She picked up the fork and took a bite. It was overly sweet and artificial, but it tasted like fuel. She wasn't running anymore. She was hunting. The sun was just beginning to bleed over the horizon, painting the sky in bruised shades of purple and orange, when Viviane pulled the Honda Civic into the outskirts of Atlantic City. It was a gambling town, a place of desperate hope and crushing loss, the perfect backdrop for what she was about to do. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from Clara Jenkins, the New York Times reporter. "The Borgata, Penthouse Suite B. She's there with a group of friends for a pre-celebration weekend. Nathaniel is expected to join them tonight via helicopter." Viviane stared at the screen. Of course. Nathaniel was so arrogant, so assured of his victory, that he had sent his mistress ahead to start the party while he cleaned up the mess with his wife. He treated people like inventory. He had simply restocked the shelf. Viviane needed a disguise. The blonde bun and the black sheath dress were too recognizable for a casino floor, where cameras captured every angle. She found a 24-hour Walmart and bought cheap hair dye, chestnut brown oversized sunglasses, a pair of worn denim jeans and a grey hoodie. In the cramped bathroom of a gas station, she watched her blonde locks darken in the sink. As the dye took hold, Viviane Sterling disappeared. In the mirror, a stranger stared back harder, wearier, but with eyes that burned with cold fire. She drove to the Borgata. She didn't park in the valet. She parked in the self-park structure 3 levels up near the exit ramp. Entering the casino floor was an assault on the senses, the ringing of slot machines, the smell of recycled air and stale perfume. the kaleidoscope of lights. Viviane kept her head down, moving through the crowd like a ghost. She wasn't here to gamble with chips. She made her way to the high-limit bar, a vantage point that offered a view of the private elevators leading to the penthouse suites. She ordered a seltzer water and waited. 3 hours passed. Her legs ached and exhaustion clawed at the edges of her mind. But she didn't move. Then she saw her. Chantel emerged from the private elevator, surrounded by an entourage of 3 other girls who looked like carbon copies of her heavy makeup designer bags and an air of bored entitlement. They were laughing loud and shrill, their voices cutting through the ambient noise. "I'm telling you," Chantel was saying, checking her reflection in her phone screen. "He said the settlement is done. He's practically single. By next month I'll have a ring that makes hers look like a crackerjack prize." Her friends squealed in delight. Viviane felt a surge of anger, but she pushed it down. Anger was messy. Calculation was clean. She watched as the group moved toward the high-end boutiques that lined the casino promenade. They entered a jewelry store. Viviane followed, keeping her distance. She watched through the display window as Chantel tried on a diamond necklace, preening for the mirror. Viviane took out her burner phone. She dialed the front desk of the Borgata, putting on her best, harried assistant voice. "Hi, this is Jessica from Mr. Sterling's office. I'm trying to reach Ms. Chantel. It's urgent regarding Mr. Sterling's arrival." "One moment, I can connect you to the suite," the receptionist said. "No, she's not in the suite," Viviane said quickly. "She's in the jewelry store downstairs. Could you page the store? Tell them Nathaniel Sterling is on the line for her. It's a surprise." "Of course." Viviane hung up and watched. A moment later, a sales associate approached Chantel, handing her the store phone. Chantel's face lit up. She shooed her friends away and took the phone, turning her back to the window for privacy. Viviane saw her opportunity. She walked into the store. The security guard barely glanced at the woman in the grey hoodie. Viviane moved to the counter where Chantel's purse, a $30,000 Birkin bag, was sitting unattended. Chantel was cooing into the phone. "Hello, Nate, baby. I can't hear you." Viviane reached into her pocket. She didn't take anything from the purse. She added something. She slipped a small, folded piece of paper into the open side pocket of the bag. Then just as quickly, she turned and walked out. Chantel hung up the phone, looking annoyed. There was no one there, probably just bad reception. She turned back to the counter, grabbed her bag and tossed it over her shoulder, completely unaware that she was now carrying a bomb, not an explosive one, but a social one. Viviane retreated to a bench outside the store. She waited for Chantel to open the bag. It happened 10 minutes later at a cafe. Chantel was digging for her lipstick. She frowned, pulling out the folded note. She opened it. Viviane, watching from 20 feet away, saw the color drain from the girl's face. The note read, "I know about the abortion in Miami last year. Does Nathaniel? V." It was a gamble. A massive one. Viviane had found a receipt from a clinic in Miami in the slush folder paid for by Nathaniel's credit card, but the date didn't align with any of Nathaniel's trips. It aligned with a week Chantel had spent there with her cousin. If Nathaniel had paid for it, he knew. But if Chantel had used the card without telling him what it was specifically for, or if the baby wasn't Nathaniel's. Chantel stood up, knocking over her iced coffee. She looked around frantically, her eyes wide with terror. She wasn't looking for a ghost. She was looking for a blackmailer. She grabbed her phone and dialed a number. not Nathaniel's. Vivian smiled grimly. Got you. If she called Nathaniel, the secret was safe. If she called someone else, she was hiding something. Chantel was whispering furiously into the phone. Someone knows. I don't know. They left a note. No, Nate thinks it was a cyst removal. If he finds out it was my ex's, he'll kill me. Vivian recorded the visual of the panic on her phone. She didn't need the audio. The body language said everything. The perfect new life Nathaniel was building was built on lies, just like his buildings. Vivian stood up. She had successfully rattled the cage. Now the bird would sing, and the noise would distract the hunter. While Chantel was melting down in Atlantic City, Nathaniel Sterling was in his office in Manhattan, staring at a wall of monitors. "We have a hit on a credit card," Garrison said, bursting into the room. He looked disheveled, a rare state for the security chief. Nathaniel spun around. "Where?" "A gas station in Delaware. 2 hours ago. Someone bought a tank of gas and a burner phone using an old emergency card linked to your household account. One you forgot to cancel." "She's sloppy." Nathaniel sneered, relieved. "She's panicking." "Delaware. She's heading south, maybe to her sister's place in Carolina. I have a team mobilizing in D.C. to intercept her on I-95, Garrison said. "Good. No police. Just bring her to the safe house in the Hamptons and get that drive." Nathaniel leaned back in his chair, finally relaxing. He poured himself a scotch. He had won. He always won. She was just a woman with a broken heart and a Honda Civic. He was a titan of industry with a private army. His office phone rang. It was his personal line. Only 5 people had this number. "Sterling," he answered. "Hello, Nathaniel." The glass of scotch slipped from his hand and shattered on the floor. "Vivian," he whispered, "where are you?" "I'm closer than you think," she said. Her voice was different now. The tremble was gone. It was cold, metallic. "Vivian, listen to me," Nathaniel said, his voice dropping to a persuasive, dangerous purr. "You're making a mistake. You're tired. You're not thinking clearly. Garrison is going to find you. It's only a matter of time. Just tell me where you are, and we can work this out. I'll double the settlement. 400,000. Cash." Vivian laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "You think this is about money?" "You really don't know me at all, do you? 10 years, Nathaniel. I sat across the table from you for 10 years, and you never really saw me." "I saw a trophy," Nathaniel snapped, losing his cool. "And now I see a thief." "You see a mirror, Nathaniel," she countered. "I'm doing exactly what you taught me. Strike first. Strike hard. Leave nothing on the table. Isn't that your motto?" "What do you want?" he demanded. "I want you to look at your email," she said. Nathaniel frowned. He clicked his mouse, waking up his screen. An email had just arrived from an anonymous address. Subject: The Foundation. He opened it. It was a single attachment. The structural engineer's report for the Brooklyn Tower. The one he had buried. "You wouldn't," Nathaniel breathed. "You signed an NDA. You signed the prenup. You leak that, and I will sue you into oblivion. I will garnish your wages until you die. I will put you in jail for corporate espionage." "You can't sue me if you're in federal prison," Vivian said calmly. "And I've already sent it." "Sent it to who?" Nathaniel screamed, standing up. "The New York Times. Clara Jenkins. She's drafting the article right now. It runs Sunday morning." Nathaniel felt the room spin. Vivian, wait. Don't do this. That building, it's my legacy. It's $1 billion. It's a tomb, Nathaniel, and I won't let you fill it. I'll give you anything, he pleaded, desperation cracking his voice. 5 million, 10 million. I'll wire it right now. Just call her. Tell her it's a fake. Tell her you forged it. There is one thing I want, Vivian said softly. Name it. I want you to go to the window. Nathaniel hesitated. What? Go to the window, Nathaniel. Look down. He walked slowly to the floor-to-ceiling glass. He looked down at the street 40 stories below. I don't see anything, he said. Look at the digital billboard across the street, she said. The one you rent for your company ads. Nathaniel looked up. The massive LED screen usually displayed the Sterling Corp logo, a shining silver S. But it flickered. The image changed. It wasn't a logo. It was a video. A grainy, shaky video taken from a phone. It showed Chantel, his mistress, sitting in a cafe whispering frantically into a phone. The subtitles were large and clear. If Nate finds out the baby wasn't his, he'll kill me. Nathaniel stared. The cars below honked. Pedestrians stopped to look up. The video looped. His humiliation was being broadcast in 4K resolution to the entirety of Midtown Manhattan. How? Nathaniel choked out. How did you? I hacked your cloud account for the billboard, Vivian said. You used the same password for everything. Remember Sterling King 1? You botch, he roared. I'm not done, Vivian said. That video is just the appetizer. The article is the main course. And Nathaniel. The Delaware credit card charge, that wasn't me. I mailed that card to a trucker at a rest stop in Jersey with a note saying, buy yourself a tank on me. I'm not in the South. I'm not in D.C. Nathaniel scanned the street below, his eyes wild. Where are you? Turn around, she said. Nathaniel spun around to face his office door. It didn't open. The office remained empty. I'm in your head, Nathaniel, she whispered, and I'm going to stay there until you have nothing left. The line went dead. Nathaniel stood in the center of his office, the silence deafening. The billboard outside flashed his shame over and over. His phone began to ring, then his landline, then Garrison's walkie-talkie. The walls were closing in. For the first time in his life, Nathaniel Sterling wasn't the one holding the remote control. He was just a character in a tragedy, and the final act had just begun. Sunday morning in New York City usually brought a quiet calm, a brief respite before the city that never sleeps ramped up for another week. But this Sunday, the silence was shattered by the thud of 1,000 heavy newspapers hitting doorsteps and the synchronized ping of notifications lighting up smartphones across the Upper East Side. The headline of the New York Times was printed in bold, unforgiving black ink, the crack in the skyline. How Sterling Corp built a $1 billion death trap. Below the fold, a secondary headline read, The Secret Slush Funds and the Socialite Who Blew the Whistle. Nathaniel Sterling sat in his penthouse, the paper spread out on his glass coffee table. He hadn't slept in 36 hours. He was still wearing the same suit from Friday now, rumpled and stained with sweat. The apartment was silent. Chantel was gone. She had packed her bags and fled the moment the billboard video went viral, taking her jewelry and leaving only a scrawled note that said, I don't do drama. He was alone. The article was devastating. Clara Jenkins had done her job with surgical precision. She detailed the bribed inspectors, the falsified safety reports, and the structural flaws in the Brooklyn Tower. She laid out the money trail from the Cayman accounts. She even included a quote from an anonymous source. He built his empire on quicksand, assuming the world was too heavy to notice. He was wrong. Nathaniel's phone began to ring. It wasn't the press. It wasn't his lawyer. It was the board of directors. He let it ring. He knew what was coming. An emergency vote of no confidence, the freezing of his assets, the hostile takeover. Then a new sound cut through the penthouse, the heavy rhythmic thrum of helicopter blades. Nathaniel walked to the window. He didn't look down at the street this time. He looked straight ahead where a police chopper was hovering near his terrace. Below, sirens wailed, converging on his building like a pack of wolves. The doorman buzzed up. "Mr. Sterling, the FBI is in the lobby. They have a warrant." Nathaniel dropped the phone. He looked around his apartment. The $10 million view, the Andy Warhol original on the wall, the empty space where his life used to be. It was all over. The arrogance that had fueled him for 40 years had evaporated, leaving behind a terrified, small man. "4,000 miles away, the air was crisp and smelled of pine and snow. Viviane sat at a small cafe table overlooking Lake Zurich. The water was a sheet of glass, reflecting the snow-capped peaks of the Swiss Alps. She wore a thick cashmere coat and oversized sunglasses, though there was no one here to recognize her. On the table sat a tablet. She was watching the live news feed from New York. The camera zoomed in on Nathaniel Sterling being led out of his building in handcuffs. He looked older, broken. He tried to hide his face from the paparazzi, but the flashbulbs were relentless. The King of New York was being dethroned on national television. Viviane felt a strange sensation in her chest. She expected triumph. She expected joy. But what she felt was simply relief. A deep, exhaling release of a breath she had been holding for a decade. She sipped her espresso and closed the tablet. She didn't need to watch the rest. The lawyers would handle the fallout. The VC. Trust the entity Nathaniel had so foolishly put in her name contained more than just the car. It held the deed to a villa in Tuscany and enough liquid assets to ensure she would never have to depend on anyone ever again. She stood up and tossed a few francs on the table. She walked out of the cafe and down the cobblestone street toward a private garage near the lakefront. The valet saw her coming and smiled. He pressed a button and the garage door lifted. There it was, the Ferrari 250 GTO. She had shipped it immediately after the swap in the warehouse using a logistics contact she had made years ago during Nathaniel's European tours. While Nathaniel was chasing a Honda Civic in Delaware, the Ferrari was already in a shipping container labeled industrial machinery, crossing the Atlantic. It gleamed under the garage lights, a silver bullet that had survived the war. Viviane ran her hand along the cold metal. This car had been Nathaniel's pride, his symbol of power, the object he loved more than her. Now it was just a car. A beautiful, expensive car, but just a machine. She opened the door and slid into the driver's seat. It still smelled of victory. She turned the key. The engine roared a sound that echoed off the stone walls of the garage. Viviane didn't drive it fast this time. She eased it out onto the road that wound around the lake. She rolled the window down, letting the cold mountain air rush in. She thought about the woman she was a week ago, timid, silenced, waiting for permission to exist. That woman was gone, left behind, in a cold conference room in Manhattan. She approached a tunnel leading toward the mountains. As the darkness swallowed the silver car, Vivian looked into the rearview mirror one last time. She wasn't looking for Nathaniel. She wasn't looking for the past. She was just checking the road behind her to make sure it was empty. It was. She shifted gears, the engine singing a high, perfect note. Vivian Cross smiled a real smile this time. Not for show, not for revenge, but for herself. And then she accelerated into the light. So what is the cost of freedom? For Vivian Cross, it was a signature, a smile, and the courage to drive away from the life she was told she needed. Nathaniel Sterling thought he held all the cards because he held all the money. He forgot that the most dangerous person in the room is the one who has been watching, listening, and planning while everyone else was busy speaking. Vivian didn't just steal a car. She reclaimed her identity. She proved that when you strip away the ego and the assets, the person with the clearest conscience and the best exit strategy always wins. And that is the story of how one woman turned a divorce decree into the ultimate revenge. It's a reminder that sometimes silence is louder than a scream, and the best revenge isn't getting even, it's getting free. I want to know what you would have done in Vivian's shoes. Would you have taken the money and run? Or would you have burned his empire to the ground like she did? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story of high-stakes justice, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss a story. I've got an even crazier tale coming up next week about a lottery winner who faked his own death. You won't want to miss it. Thanks for watching, and remember, be careful who you underestimate.